Now, I started talking about this in the last video about the multiplier effect of time spacing. This is really a standalone concept, and it's to educate your prospects. That's why you're having a sequence. You can educate your prospects. Now, you can educate your prospects in different ways. One could be through a free ebook. You can space it out over time and educate them through a sequence as well. So this concept applies to everything you do. It applies to any kind of free content you give away. It also applies to once you have a purchase, your customers, how to educate them so that they can join the next level and so on. But I'm specifically talking about this as it applies to email in this little video. See the parallels between the other sections, because now that I've talked about it for email, I don't have to explain it as thoroughly for the other topics, because education is powerful. So if you educate your prospects, it's a way to qualify them. We talk about qualifying prospects. It's a way to qualify them and transform them into targeted prospects. So it takes someone only a little bit curious, and it makes them totally interested and ready for it. Now, I was telling a story to a partner of mine the other day, someone that I'm kind of grooming in a new business. And I told him this story, and he was really impressed by it. And I think it's going to be helpful for you, so I'm going to tell you the story right here, because this is the good place to tell it. I got an idea for a potential business model. Now, I'm not really serious about doing this business, but this could be kind of a good business. My brother, when he was in high school, he was a senior in high school, and he wanted to be a carpenter. Well, now he's a carpenter. He builds houses out of wood and does all that kind of stuff. He's a carpenter. He went through an apprenticeship, and now he's a full-fledged carpenter. The plan is to get him to build a house for me in Hawaii. That's what we're going to be working on pretty soon. When he was in high school, he wanted to be a carpenter. In 12th grade, he got the application for a carpenter apprenticeship because he's in the carpenters union, and you need to apply to their union. There's an application process. If they accept your application, then there's a test because you need to know certain things to be a carpenter. I was majoring in math in college at the time. I was a mathematics major, and he was going to be a carpenter. Now, to be a carpenter, you need to know trigonometry pretty well. There's ratios you need to know. It's more the practical side of trigonometry, but carpenters actually use triangles and angles and formulas and rules of thumb for carpentry, and it's really just trigonometry. So it was interesting because as he was later an apprentice, he would come and tell me about stuff that he was doing, and I would say, oh, well, how do you do this? And he would tell me, and I said, oh, that's interesting, because I looked at it from a pure math perspective, and he's looking at it through a carpentry perspective, so that was interesting. So anyway, he wanted to become a carpenter really bad. That's always what he wanted to be. I don't know why he wanted to be a carpenter. That to me would just be the worst job in the world. I'm enjoying what I'm doing so much. I just think being a carpenter would be horrible. He loves it. He enjoys building. He likes being outside a lot of the time. Loves being a carpenter. He always wanted to be a carpenter because if you know my brother, this fits his personality pretty well, the kind of work that he does. And he feels satisfied when he builds something. So he wanted to become a carpenter. That was his dream. He talked about it for a few years. He just didn't realize that he needed to know trigonometry. So I ended up teaching him trigonometry, and he passed the test. He got into the union. Now he's a carpenter. But what about this type of business? This is a potential business that somebody could do. I'm not going to put the effort into doing this because after I ended college, I realized that my math tutoring days are over. I'm a retired math tutor because that's how I got through college. I delivered pizzas and I tutored people in math, and I've had enough of that. So, my kids and nieces and nephews, I'll tutor them in math, but that's about it. Don't PM me and ask me any serious math questions because I may not be able to answer them for you. Just too much in that. I'll do some math with some other people later. But here's the business. Here's the thing. To know trigonometry, you really need to know algebra and geometry, certain aspects. You don't need to know all of geometry or all of algebra, but you need to know enough about each. To learn algebra and geometry, you even got to learn arithmetic first, but we'll just assume everyone knows arithmetic. So you need this algebra and geometry, which most people who graduate high school still don't know algebra or geometry. Think about it. Do you remember how to do all the algebra problems? Do you remember how to do all the geometry problems? Well, it's okay if you don't, because the point is that most people don't use that in real life. But to become a carpenter, you need to use this kind of stuff. And you need to pass that trigonometry test. So you need to have a working knowledge of algebra and geometry to learn the trig. So what if I found some people who wanted to be carpenter's apprentices? They're in school and they're about to graduate. They really don't know trigonometry or anything like that. They may have had it but ignored it because they didn't realize they were going to need it. So what if I propose this? I found a group of, wannabe carpenters, and I proposed this to them. Okay, future carpenters of the world, I'm forming a little group, and I'm going to teach you all the algebra and geometry you want to for free, no charge. You need to know that stuff because if you want to be a carpenter, you got to know algebra and geometry. You're going to have this test, and some of this stuff's going to be on the test, and without it, you can't get into the carpenters. Tell you what, I'm having a class for the next 10 weeks. I'm going to teach you algebra and geometry for free, absolutely free, and this is going to help you get into the Carpenters Union. So then I go ahead and I teach the 10 weeks of algebra and geometry. At the end of the 10th week, I say, good for you. You guys learned all the algebra and geometry you're going to need to know. I'm so proud of you. That's really going to help you get into the carpenters. And then maybe they start packing up their books and leaving, and then I say, wait a minute, guys. You still don't know trigonometry, and trigonometry is 90% of the carpenter's test. There's only a few algebra and geometry questions. Well, maybe they'd start complaining, and I'd say, well, to learn trigonometry, you need algebra and the geometry.